All right, being 5:15, I'd like to call the Finance and Personnel Committee meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Taken. For a motion to adopt the agenda.
So move. Second.
Motion been made by Mike, seconded by Bob. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. For approval of the October 2nd meeting minutes.
Move to approve the minutes. Second.
Motion been made by John, seconded by Mike. Are there any changes or additions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Public comment? Human resource policies. Judy?
All right, so with us this evening is Stephanie Stylen. She has been with the city now for about a year and a half, right? So last July. Yep, July 24th. Fun fact is we started on the same day, 30 years apart, 29 years apart, I think it was. So, and we were the same age. So what a coincidence that
And our
was.
birthday's 4 days apart.
Yeah, so Stephanie is here tonight because she's been working very hard and diligently on some policies and updating those for the city. So we're gonna put her front and center tonight and let her go through the 4 policies that are before you tonight. So with that, Stephanie, take it away.
So we're gonna go through all 4 kind of separately, but the first 2, the call in and standby, they kind of run together. So for both of them, they were created because since the union handbook was gone, and I believe it was 2018 or so, there haven't been any policies. We've just been doing best practices. So we wanted to get something in writing. So to start, I compared what we were doing with 13 other cities, villages that were about the same size as us or local to us, and used some of their information to decide what we were going to do. And then we looked at the previous practices through all of the years, all the way back to 2005 as well. And then I went and met with Ginger, Rob, Luke, Ben, and Ted. We talked about what we wanted it all to look like and what our goal was in the end. So with those meetings, after meeting with them and the meeting with Judy and Chad, we also went down to the streets department, met with all the guys down there and got their input as well. Took that back, adopted some of their ideas, and then came up with the policy. So for the standby policy, that policy is mainly for making sure that there is someone available for any kind of emergency that the city would have, especially with the streets department and wastewater department. Facilities and parks isn't necessarily included in that standby. So somebody will be on standby every single day, all 7 days of the week in both departments. And really goes by their compensation. They'll be compensated an hour a day, 2 hours on Sundays. And on holidays, they will also get an extra 7 hours of pay on top of the 1 or 2 hours. And then other things that we added was a response time of 45 minutes with being called in. I believe it was at 30 before, but we do have some that live 30 minutes away and they may need an extra couple minutes. And then the last thing that was added in was adding the street superintendent, Luke, to be eligible for the pay if he were to provide that. He's not obligated to be in the rotation, but if dire need, if no one else is available, he will get compensated for that, which he's not right now. I think I covered most of that one.
So he won't be in the rotation, he'll just be
No.
the other.
Yeah, I mean, he can be if he wants to be, but ideally it would be the equipment operators that would do that. So if one of them is sick in that the rest are out of town for some reason, he would be able to be filling in, and he does, but he's not getting compensated for it.
Thank you.
Well, John, you work over in Appleton.
Yep.
This is pretty similar to what you guys have over there.
So with us, we have a lot more employees in each division, so we don't have a standby person. It's just, they start at the top of the list and call down, and we have, like I said, a few more employees to pick through.
And you use a technology or something that it just starts calling out and you respond back and it just wasn't.
Yeah, we have an actual app, it's called I Am Responding, that we'll download to our phone, and then it comes right to our phone like a text message. Get a text, an email, and an actual alert. Then you respond right to that, yes or no type of thing.
City in London on Saturday night, the whole 5 people we have would all be at the bar. Do you want a motion now for each one or? do you want all of it?
Yep,
Okay.
as she goes through, we'll go ahead.
Look for a motion to approve the standby policy.
So moved. Second.
Motion been made by Mike, seconded by Bob. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Move on to the call-in policy.
So same background, like I said, for the call-in policy on how it came to be as standby with looking at those other municipalities and our best practices that we've done since 2005. So the call-in policy is giving employees 2 hours of call-in pay when they are called in on duty. So if they're on standby and get called in, they would get 2 hours of pay automatically and then pay for whatever time is worked. That's been a best practice for a pretty long time, so that's not changing. The only things that we really changed in this policy was that we are allowing them to comp the 2-hour call-in. Before, it was just paid straight at the regular rate, whatever that is. Now they can comp it if they would like. The comp is still gonna be maxed at 40 hours a year though, so that won't change. And then also, when an employee takes a phone call when they are outside of work, they would be compensated for the time spent on the phone if it's over 7 minutes. We kind of had to put a limit on it, because if you're on the phone for 1 minute, getting paid for 15, that was just what we kind of decided was the best, since we use a 7-minute rule for punching in and out. So if they're on the phone 7 minutes or longer, they are to log their time so that they can get paid for that as well. They won't get the 2-hour call in, but they'll still get compensated. And that is something they can do right now. No, just nobody is doing it. So we really wanted to outline it in here that they can do that. All right, so those are the only changes that we really made to the policy. Like I said, all the same. Tour call-in if they're coming in on a Saturday, if their time worked is going to be paid at overtime, things like that. But I think that's the changes we made on that.
Can you explain you're saying that they can comp the time?
Yeah.
Could you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, so employees are able to comp 40 hours a year. Not exempt employees, I should say. So if I myself, if I work overtime, instead of getting paid time and a half, I can comp it at time and a half. Or if it's straight time, I can comp it at straight time. So if I work an hour over, I can add an hour to my comp pay.
You just cash that out at the end of the year?
You use it as time off.
Mhm.
So if an employee has time in their comp pay, then they are forced to use that first before vacation. We don't pay out comp time, it has to be used up. We usually say by the middle of December. It cannot carry over to the next year, we don't pay it out.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're looking for a motion for the call-in policy.
Make that motion.
Second. Motion been made by Bob, seconded by John. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Going on to the telecommuting policy.
All right, So this is a new policy for the city. We did not have this one before. So we decided to bring this forward just for in the case of an emergency that something happened with an employee, that they aren't able to come in the office, but they are able to work. So we found a template with SIPMIC, and it was used by the city of Sun Prairie. That was aligned pretty closely to what we were looking for our needs. So we went off that template and then also worked with Melissa from SIPMIC to make sure everything looked good and we were covering all our bases. So for this, it is meant for the employee, if they're, say their kid is sick at home or they have COVID, but they feel fine, but they can't come in. For them to reach out to their supervisor to request to work from home. And it may just be for a day or 2 days. It's not meant to be consistently. It's not meant to be every single week. It's not even meant to be every single month. That request will go to their supervisor and that would also go to Chad for approval. That for their reasoning and their time requested is doable. Going into that is employee work performance. Now, we have the right to say yes or no, we don't have to approve it. And we can base that off of their work performance or the needs of the department. So if it's super short staffed, we have the ability to say no. I know in the most part, the people who would be working from home would probably have access to a laptop from us, but we do not expect them to be keeping any equipment at home or having a home workspace like set up. We wouldn't be supplying any of that. It would just be on an as needed basis. I do have it set up for them to sign off on the policy. So they would have to request each time they would like to work from home. Again, it's meant to be very few and far between. So just an acknowledgement one time, and then they would do that request to their supervisor each time. And then the last page, I just have for training purposes, when we go through this with employees, what is considered to be a special circumstance. And as you can see, like weather, if the roads are bad and you can't get in, but when they're plowed, we would expect you to try and make it into the office. Illness, I did talk about already. Virtual trainings, they have an all-day training. It would be okay for them to stay home if their supervisor is okay with it. FMLA with doctor approval. Again, illness with oneself, like COVID. And then daycare and school closings too. So if daycare closes and they don't have coverage, again, expecting them to find coverage and then come in once they do. And then what is expected of an employee, I did kind of go over that already, of communicating with the supervisor first and then letting them know their needs as far as possible in advance and then getting it approved. And then the last thing that we did want to highlight with this policy, especially to the employees, was that if it's used or abused, it can be taken away. So if we notice people are using it a lot, we would take it away or make changes.
Questions on a telecommuting policy?
And obviously, it's not for all employees, but our plow drivers. Sorry, can't be plowing snow from your bedroom or from your dining room table, but we want to be a little bit more flexible for the employees to allow a little bit of that remote work availability, but we don't have the staff to do, hey, you can remote work every day. We don't have enough people to bodies in the office to accommodate all that, but there's plenty of situations, someone's sick, you know, I have to take care of a sick child or sick parent. Yeah, I mean, you can still be productive and do some work, so it gives us a little bit of flexibility with that.
I look for a motion for the telecommuting policy.
Make a motion to approve the telecommuting policy as presented. Second.
Made by John, second by Bob. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to the hiring policy.
Last one, it's a long policy. But so this policy was last updated in 2009, so it's been quite a while. And it came, I believe, as a request to Chad as what our policy looked like from another city administrator. And that was when we realized that it was pretty old and just needed to be updated. So the template that is used is again from CIVMC's website. All of the verbiage is from them as well. I did, tweak a few little things, but other than that, it's straight from CIVMC. And then also worked with Lisa very closely on this one, back and forth with a lot of questions, and she reviewed it just to make sure that everything included and that I added or took out aligned with what needed to be in there. So for this one, I'm just really gonna go over the changes. It's 18 pages long, so don't want to go over every single page. But one of the changes that was made was moving from affirmative action to equal employment opportunity. And along with that, we added the equal employment opportunity questions to all of our applications. So that is in regards to race, gender, disability, and veteran status. So all 4 of those are asked on all applications now, and they are optional. The employee or the applicant doesn't have to answer them. They have the option to not answer. So that was added. Another thing that was changed, it did have the records being maintained by the city administrator, and those would be maintained by human resources instead now. Job descriptions, it was listed to review them every year, but CIVMC actually recommends every 7 years, unless something major with the job changed, or if there's, say, a lot of turnover, or whenever we're hiring, it's always good to look at it again, but otherwise every 7 years instead of 1. We also used to have listed to consult with CIVMC before adding any testing for positions, so we were able to take that out, and we can kind of do that at our leisure and set it up how we would like to. And then the last thing that was taken out was union status, exempt, non-exempt, and employment at will. Those are all listed in our job descriptions and our postings and in the offer letter. So they did not need to be in this policy as well. It was pretty repetitive, so she had us take those out. Otherwise, the policy itself is just a best practice on hiring, equal employment, making sure everyone gets their fair chance at the jobs, and then all of the documentation along the way, and making decisions and keeping all that on record.
Did you compare some of these to what other cities have?
I did not compare this to what other cities have.
So, Cities and Villages Mutual our insurance company. We do have access to a number of individuals who have been in the human resource arena for a very long time, and they have sample policies that of what these are to look like. And so that gives Stephanie the opportunity to reach out to them and have them, they review everything in here and make sure we're complying with all federal and state laws when it comes to hiring. So like Stephanie had mentioned, there was a lot of things because the last time we had updated this policy was 2009. There has been a lot of changes in the hiring world since then. And CIVMC keeps up on all that stuff, but they need for us to reach out as a community to make our way through policies and work through policies. And we've been fortunate this year that Stephanie's been able to work through 4 policies and get them updated and brought forth to finance for approval. But just keeping on top of all of the changes that happen, and then having that resource of cities and villages to know what's supposed to be in these, but then actually looking at the city of New London and any ideas that Stephanie may have that she would add into the policy and making sure that they're like, yep, that's okay, that you would add that verbiage. Those comply with all the laws and regulations. And just to make sure that we're designing it for the city of New London also at the same time as encompassing what needs to be in those policies.
Yes, and I did take like our old policy. It mirrors it very perfectly, except kind of a lot more words, essentially. But anything that wasn't in the newer one that I did get the template from, that was included in our old one, it was still relevant, was put in the new one as well. But I'd say about like 99% of it was already in there. And I know from working with them with other policies, they do work with like a lawyer when they're creating their model policies to make sure that everything is compliant. So, and then they put them out to us before we use them.
It really is a great relationship that we have with our insurance company. It is not the norm that you have an insurance company that insures you and then has the educational piece on the other end. So we are very fortunate to be a member and an owner of Cities and Villages Mutual Insurance Company and have those people that we can reach out to, because basically Stephanie's sitting in that chair all by herself and she has experts that she can reach out to that have been in the field for 20 and 30 years to help her make her way through the human resource part of her position, because it is a very encompassing and all inclusive, not all inclusive is what I should say. And there's a lot of things that you have to make sure that you're including in particular a hiring policy to make sure we're in compliance with all those applicable federal and state laws. So they are a great resource to us, especially in small communities where we don't necessarily have those individuals on staff to reach out to. So through Stephanie's career here, she'll become the expert, and we'll probably start reaching out to her, and because you've been there, done that, and been through them. So it's a really nice place for us to be at, to be able to have those individuals to rely on and know that they are the experts in what they do.
Can I get a motion on the hiring policy?
Make the motion for the city's model hiring model policy.
Motion been made by Bob, seconded by Mike. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Nice job.
Have a good night.
Review the attorney agreement. Chad?
In your packet, there is a retainer and engagement agreement given by Attorney Stegbauer. His current agreement has a statement in it that we would review it every couple of years. So this is the time when we review that. He has proposed to keep his retainer cost $40,000 a year the same. The only change with that is he would remove one service out of his out of the services that he's identified in his agreement. He's proposed to remove out any court cases out of this agreement. What's he doing? He used to do a lot of the court, municipal court type of prosecution type things. He's now kind of getting out of that, and he's having a staff member take care of that for all municipalities. So he wants to have all his municipalities pay for that separate, depending on how many hours it takes for court cases. So depending on if they're in court for whatever it is, I can't give you my crystal ball doesn't work for whatever court cases are coming in for a year. But he said we probably would average about $5,000 extra per year on court prosecutions that he would have to pay somebody in his staff. So again, his base retainer he's proposing to keep the same. He would just remove the service of court prosecutions out of this lineup. Everything else would stay the same. Questions? And again, he represents us, Shawano, Clintonville, I think Freedom. He's got a couple townships scattered in there as well. So we're not the only municipality that he represents.
Can I get a motion on the attorney agreement?
I would make a motion to retain the Wolf River Layers for our layer services.
Second.
Motion made by Bob, seconded by Tim. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
I
Right.
think one of the things I would like to talk about that is that it just came to my head.
Mhm.
Remember when we talked to the chief about adding a fee to the court? So we were gonna
Oh.
kind of go through a year to see what this actually looked like in dollars and cents and get some history of, or, you know, some data behind us, I should say. And then the chief was saying possibly we could add the cost of that, estimated cost based on a year, onto the ticket so that the city then wouldn't have to pay for the cost. It would be reimbursed through the ticket process. So we'll be looking at
Okay.
probably bringing that forward possibly next year.
All right, thank you, Judy. Ambulance agreement with Gold Cross. Chad?
Also, in your agreement is the annual ambulance service agreement, pretty much the same as years past. The only difference is on the back part of the pages, you will see Exhibit B, which is the cost service. So the costs they're proposing, you can see a history throughout from 2015 to 2024. Last year's per capita cost was $13.17. This year's coming up cost is $13.46. And one of the huge differences is that the village of Greenville, and I can't remember what town, there was like one or two towns that came in as well. So Gold Cross services many of the municipalities in the Fox Valley. One of their, I'll call it consortiums or groups, used to be Grand Chute, Greenville, and one of the townships in that area. Grand Chute decided to get out of the Gold Cross agreement and provide ambulance services on their own through their fire department. That alienated Greenville and I can't remember what township it was, that they had to find a different consortium or group to be a part of. So they are added into our group. So there are, I believe, 23, now municipalities in our consortium. And the cool thing about bringing Greenville in is that it also allowed another ambulance into our consortium. Prior to Greenville coming in, there was 3 ambulances in the consortium, one based in the New London area, one based in the Wapaka area, and one based in the Waiawega area. And then if one ambulance was used, then they start shifting around, kind of, if New London ambulance was used, they would shift either the Waiawega or the Wapaka ambulance stage halfway in between Wapaka and London to be kind of in between, just to kind of keep that coverage. Now we have 4 ambulances in this area, which is kind of nice. So we're kind of adding another ambulance and also a minimal cost to get that into our group. They gave us some other numbers to see if this consortium, prior to Greenville coming in, if we wanted another ambulance, this per capita jumped up to like, what, 23, I think it was. It jumped up huge. The cost of an ambulance is very expensive with the rig and the manpower. So bringing in Greenville was a positive thing for the entire consortium to get another ambulance in there. But other than that, everything is pretty much the same from the years past.
I need a motion to go with the ambulance agreement.
Make a motion to go with the ambulance agreement.
Second. Motion been made by Tim, seconded by John. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Ambulance resolution. Okay.
This year, one interesting thing that came to the consortium was that state statute allows municipalities to increase their levy for the cost increase of ambulance services. So we've talked about this in the past. Levy limits that are on, we can only increase our levy, our operation cost based on net new construction. But this is an exemption in the state statute that allows you to increase your levy to recuperate an increase of cost of EMS services. But to do that, every single one of the 23 municipalities in the consortium has to approve this resolution, and it has to be done on an annual basis. So each one of the municipalities are bringing this forward to have their municipality approve it. It doesn't mean you have to increase your levy. This year, we don't need to because of this. But there might be a reason 2 years from now that ambulance services skyrocket, that we have to increase our levy to cover that cost. This gives us the opportunity to do that. So this year, I'm proposing to approve the resolution. Again, we don't need to do it this year, but to be a good team player, one of these other communities might need to do it. And if we don't approve it, then nobody can. Everybody's got to approve it to be a good team player for the consortium. So I'm kind of making a proposal to the council and the committee here to kind of approve this, and then we would send this to Gold Cross, and then everybody in the consortium would be sending their resolutions to Gold Cross to be the plan holder for this. And then if someone needs it, they can they can increase their levy.
Can I get a motion on the ambulance resolution?
Make the motion to approve the ambulance resolution. Second.
Motion made by Bob, seconded by John. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Move on to the 2025 budget ordinance. Judy?
All right, so after presentation of the budget, I presented that on October 22nd, 2024. Then our next process is to put together an ordinance. And in here it shows the revenues and expenditures that I presented that evening, along with the capital fund, and the debt service fund, and the wheel tax fund. And this is required by state statute that we approve an ordinance in order to levy. So if you look at the second page of this document, right here this is the amount, the dollar amount that will be put on the tax levy, and the ordinance allows us to do that. And then what happens is this will go to the council meeting. Okay, that will go to council meeting, and actually it's probably right here.
19.
Yep, on the 19th. And we'll do a budget hearing at that council meeting, and then this will be on the finance agenda part of that council meeting. And we need to waive the second hearing, so you'll see that in that meeting. So we'll do a reading and then waive the second reading, and then this will be adopted. And then that allows me to actually put the tax bills together and send them out to the taxpayers. This is the ordinance of which I presented the original budget. So same numbers as the evening of October 27th.
Can I get a motion for the 2025 budget ordinance?
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Mike, seconded by Bob. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Monthly finance reports. Judy?
All right, so we are 3/4 of the way through the year. The longer we get into the year, the quicker it goes. Things just escalate, especially once we get to September. So here we are in September. So if you look at a percentage, it should be, most of these should be at about 75%. And we're sideways, and can you make that straight up and down? Thank you. I did good. So if you look at the categories, most of them are insurances running a little high, but again, we don't see our dividend usually until January, so that'll come back down. We will go over 100% and then come back down once we receive the dividend in January from CIVMIC. But everything else is running within that 75%. Social services is just because we paid for we didn't actually, Festival Foods actually paid for the fireworks. And then, but we expense it out of here, so there won't be a lot of dollars coming out of there anymore. Equipment replacements, we intended to spend this much because we used some designated funds for that. Equipment maintenance has come into the 75%, so that's looking good now also. But I don't see anything at this time that I'm concerned about. Does anyone have any questions on any expenditures in particular? Okay, then I'll move on to the revenue.
Hold
Chad, you
Gonna get a catch in the neck time to look at it.
All right, the revenue report and yeah. I'm gonna have to give Missy a hard time.
Yep.
Made me look sideways at many people. So we're at 100% property tax collection. I know the recreation department received a big grant here, so that a negative is actually a good thing on the revenue side, means we received 21,000 more than anticipated. Also in interest is up 22,000. Here's 76,000. We had talked about the position that we are looking to fund on the permit side, and you can see here that we collected about, not all of this is permits, but I would say, you know, a great majority of the $60,000-ish in here is from additional permits for construction, heating, and things of that nature. So that's why that is higher than anticipated. Any questions on any of the revenues? I don't anticipate any of these not to come for full collection in 2024.
Where does the, to get in the gate for the brush dump, where does that show up on here, the expense for the cards and stuff that?
Public charges for services.
Public sir-
The
sir-
brush pickup?
Yeah.
Yes, public charges for services. That's right here. But there's a lot of things in there. All right, then we'll move on to fund balance.
Hold on.
And there really hasn't been any change. Here's the, you know, one of the vehicles that I talked about that we're using aside fund balance, that's the 285 right here, and I know that piece of equipment has been bought. So that dollar amount actually comes out of here that we set aside for the purchase of that. But otherwise, there has not been any change within our assigned or unassigned fund balance from last month to this month. Unless anyone has any questions on any of those. We'll move on to the wheel tax, and we have collected 93,500. On house and Alcon, we've spent 78, so we have about 15,000 in the positive. But with the year before, we have $148,000 in that fund. And these are some of the things we're planning on using those dollars for. And I'm sure as we go into next year, some other things will be earmarked for possible expenditure for this also. And then we have our bonding schedule, and we're just about finished with our bond dollars. We have 500 of this is library, and then 180 is house. So once we finish that, then we move into the ARPA funding that's sitting here, and we will be utilizing those dollars to finish up that project. I would expect a lot of bills to come in shortly. Or the downtown. Then move on to my monthly report. Just highlight some of the things. Obviously, I finalized the 25 budgets, and I have prepared that information for the paper. We have to get information to the paper, and it has to be published 15 days prior to those budget hearings. We'll be having a budget hearing, and then we'll have the sewage commission also. So just you're aware that at 6:15, so 6:30, I believe, council starts this month. So at 6:15, there will be a utility commission meeting so that we can go do the public hearing for that also and then approve that budget. So 6:15 and that's 6:30 for the general fund budget for that public hearing. I attended CIVMIC annual training, and then we talk about insurance products and programs and services offered by that CIVMIC staff that I talked about when it comes to our human resource policies earlier tonight. Department heads were requested to complete their 24 capital projects and equipment needs for the list, and it's actually 25, not 24. April's putting those together, and then we're gonna meet as a group after our staff meeting on the 19th and go through prioritizing those capital projects and equipment before we have our meeting the first week of December on December 4th. We are gearing up for tax collection season. As we know, once we get that resolution passed, then I'm able to get that information put together and sent out to the county for tax collection season. Also having conversations with the team in the office over who's going to be here, not going to be here at Christmas time, and try to make that so everyone can have some time off if they want to. We have a new tax program with Wapaka County, so we're working on, it's actually not new to us because Outagamie County has the same program. It's called T-Tech, but we're working through the intricacies of that with Wapaka County because it is new for them. So we will be able to enter in some of our very large mortgage payments this year. So we're hoping to find some efficiencies within that program for the first time in a while. So kind of just working through that as a team in our office and what that's going to look like this year. Also gearing up and thinking about the end of the year processes as that time is just around the corner. So what does that going to look like? When is our audit going to be next year? Now, how many weeks do we have in between and what needs to get done? I participated in some wellness meetings. We continue to work on the efficiencies in the time tracking process, and you will be hearing some information on that coming up at the capital projects meeting on December 4th, and we'll be talking about what that's going to look like. Worked through a number of human resource policies, as you know, and those were presented tonight. Had a number of inquiries from banking institutions on the tax collection process, and we answer those every year. They want to see what our process is going to look like from year to year. They check in with us and make sure is it going to be the same or different, or and this year it will be different because we have our largest county changing their tax program, so hopefully it'll be more efficient this year. Updated all the financial information that I presented to you previously. And then just working through the nuances of our new personal property tax. It's no longer put on the tax roll. So what did that look like? And then the statement of taxes, the assessment values that changed this year. So all that personal property dropped off. But our increase in value made that more steady than it would in an environment that didn't have a lot of building within their community. So it worked out for us. And then the state payment and what those taxes will look like in the future for personal property. That's all I got.
Anybody have any questions? For a motion to adjourn? Second. Motion made by Mike, seconded by Tim. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?